It's been a while since I've taken a look at the higher time frames for Bitcoin. For the better part of the last few months, we've been, relatively boring, I'd say, at least in terms of the, higher time frames and the more significant price moves. We've basically been ranging since about April at this point, but I think it's important to, every once in a while build higher time frame context, especially when things are starting to get boring like this, because if things start picking up soon, if we end up breaking this range one way or another, it can be useful to have the higher time frame context in mind already. And so I figured it's a good time to refresh on that. And I'll be starting on the weekly time frame and working my way down and, potentially looking for some trade setups locally for Bitcoin as well. I am not in any Bitcoin trades right now, so I am potentially looking for some. So I'll just quickly run through the higher time frame stuff. I've done this a bunch of times already, but on the weekly time frame, the most important thing that has happened recently was we broke market structure bullish on this candle right here when we finally closed above this weekly lower high. So we transitioned market structure bullish. From there, we have gotten to move up into resistance. Right now, we are finding resistance on the previous range lows. There is also this order block right here. So, this whole zone I would call resistance. And so far, we have basically been stalling out here. The first thing that happened was we, topped out, got a little retracement, found some support on the break of structure line. And then when price came back up to attempt to make another higher high in the weekly, we SFP'd it. And that is not a good sign if you want the weekly uptrend to continue. This is the first sign that the, uptrend is weakening. And following these wicks of the high, we broke lower time frame structure. I think it was like a 4-hour break that we got right here after putting in another wick that was higher. So we got a market structure break, began an internal downtrend after the higher time frame SFP, and that ultimately brought us down to the weekly higher low. And so far, we have SFP'd the weekly higher low now. We wicked the low. If I actually take a proper tool so I can draw a straight line, you'll see that we wicked out that low. So we got SFPs all over the place, SFPs of the high and the low. Essentially, though, we're just ranging here, and we've deviated now both the high and the low. And since this SFP of the low, we haven't really done much of anything. We've been ranging here in this internal range, and I say internal because it is in between these two market structure points on the daily. There was no market structure break after this SFP. We've only been trading in between, the last lower high and now that low that we created. So in terms of market structure, all of this price action in here is pretty irrelevant at the moment. And, it will continue to be irrelevant until we either can come down to put in a new low, which would then make this point up here a significant point, or we come up to break the last lower high, in which case you could make the case that, this high is going to be targeted, since, an SFP usually means you'll get a run at the opposite market structure point, and a lot of people look for market structure breaks following an SFP to confirm that. But, are you really going to wait for this guy to break just to target this guy when, at that point, a majority of the move has already happened from the low? Because of that, I would much prefer if we came down to take out the low first. And obviously, if I'm looking for longs, I'd want this low to be reclaimed with an SFP. If we close a weekly candle down below this low now, then we would be transitioning weekly market structure bearish officially. So, at that point, we could be looking at a much further retrace. So, in terms of the weekly time frame, it would be nice to get a SFP this low and then break market structure. That would, keep us in the range and give us a reason to rotate to the highs. But if we close a weekly candle outside of this range, then things would be completely different. And, if we start rotating back up, it could just be for a weekly lower high. So for that reason, this low right now is very important. And until we take out that low, that is where we stand. We are trading in an internal range, not super significant price action. So now if I turn on all my other TA here, let's talk about the more internal stuff, the stuff that is happening inside of this area that we can trade at the moment. This is all that we can trade right now, and it's all that we've been able to trade since we put in this low on August 17th. So first off, clearly the high and the low of this range right now are these 2 points, and marking out this range and looking for the center point of it. Right now we are in the top section of this range. We're slightly above the midpoint of the range, and it looks like we actually just got a pretty nice bounce from the midpoint of that range. We also just ran into some important resistance, I would say, this little order block along with the golden pocket and 786 of this retracement. So we got to retrace into a significant area. So just using this, we can come up with a few pretty vague trade ideas. Number one would be we break the structure of this retrace to the upside after coming into key resistance, and potentially that will bring us down to the low of this range that I want to take out so badly. So first thing I want to look at is structure of this retrace. So getting structure of an internal range is kind of hard to do, but in this case, no matter where you pull structure from, you end up with the same point. So we broke structure kind of bullishly right here. Well, didn't break, but we made a higher high and then actually closed above it right here. So we have an uptrend from that point, and that gives us the same structure as if you just took it from the low and brought it up. So structure right now is a little iffy depending on the time frame you're looking at. On the 2 hour, we have an uptrend clearly, and then from this higher low, we put in a higher high, and on the 2 hour, a higher low before this last higher high. And that means on the 2 hour, we already broke structure bearishly when we closed a candle down below this low. But on the 4 hour, I struggled to call this a higher high and a higher low. And the only reason for that is because the candles are neighbors. There's no candles in between them. It does not look good when, the high was put in one candle before the low. And so I've seen some people make the argument that we have not broken structure bearishly yet, that there still could technically be higher time frame structure that could keep us in an uptrend. And I have this marked out right now as the 4 hour higher low. Kind of made a little mistake there. Technically, this wick did come higher than this high, and I would call this a retracement. And, in this case, it's not a great move to the upside, but at least there's one candle in between the low and the high. So, you could technically look at structure as still being in an uptrend because we haven't closed below this low yet. So my main, more day trade ideas based on this higher time frame structure really relies on this point here. If price breaks structure here, if we get a move down and we close 4 hour candles down below this low, then that would give me a reason to look for shorts. If we get a retrace and then maybe some kind of internal market structure break, that would give me a reason to look for shorts potentially down to this low. And if price comes down to wick this low, which we technically have not done yet, at least not on Binance, it was very close, but we have not touched that low. So if price eventually does come back down to take out this low and this low now, and then break structure following an SFP of it, if we're able to reclaim it and then get a bullish break, then that would give me reasons to look for longs, maybe up to this point and also potentially up to the high of the range. And so that pretty much brings us to where we are right now, trading internally in between these two 15-minute points, sitting very close to this important higher low, I would say. And I can't say what's going to happen, but I have some levels that I'm paying attention to, and depending on what I see there, we maybe will get a clearer view of what's going to happen in the future. Potentially, if we break this lower high, maybe the higher low on the 4 hour is already put in, and maybe from there we can get a move up to try and continue structure, maybe just SFP it and continue ranging here. It's hard to say what's going to happen, but I think, I've outlined the important points, and I know what I'm going to be watching for at these levels. And from there I can make my plans. So that's pretty much going to do it for this video. If I end up doing more local analysis and finding some ideas I'm interested in, then I'll make another video going over the more local stuff. So thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, and I will see you all in the next video.